welcome back to Season 3, Episode 9 of Flipping the Bird. I am Ryder Martin, your host, and today I'm joined by Ryan Nettie. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
I'm pretty good.
All right, so we're going to kick this week's episode off, and we're going to be talking some UTSA women's golf, of course. They were taking part in the Conference USA season finale tournament out there, and they came away with a fourth-place finish, which overall I would say is probably not what we were hoping for, considering that we were the two-time defending champions in the team competition, and we were boasting the defending individual winner with Ana Gonzalez. So, Ryan, I want to start with you. Overall, what were your impressions of this tournament here?
Yeah, so I noticed on the first day that things kind of got off to a bit of a rough start. I think they were down like 13 or so, or they were sitting right at fourth place, and I think like Western Kentucky and North Texas were sitting at the top and had about a 10-stroke lead over them or so. And I was like, man, it's going to take a phenomenal performance throughout the rest of this conference championship tournament for them to pull off a victory and get a three-peat. But obviously that was a little too much for them to overcome. They ended up in that fourth place spot. But I mean, I feel like you kind of saw a little bit of struggles this year as opposed to like the last two seasons where they would just go to tournaments and just outright dominate. But for this specific season and this tournament, you can tell it just kind of had like an off feeling, and things weren't as they normally are for the golf team. So all around, it's definitely a little disappointing for them to not get that three-peat. But you can't take away from the fact that they were back-to-back defending CUSA champions, and most of these girls were part of those teams. So I mean, these girls know how to win. They'll know how to bounce back. It's what they do. We're a women's golf school at the end of the day, and that's what we'll always be. So, they'll find a way.
Eddie?
Yeah, just to bounce off what Ryan said, definitely shouldn't take away anything from the back-to-back that we had, or the women had. Of course, it's going to be disappointing, after delivering, two in a row, and trying to get that third is the main goal. So overall, of course, it's disappointing, but you got to respect what these women have been doing the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think overall, kind of like you guys saying, anytime you have a back-to-back and you're going for a three-peat, if you fall short, it's going to be disappointing regardless. I mean, still, 4th out of 11 teams, solid result. That's kind of been where they've been. It's where they've been at almost the entire season. I don't believe they won a single tournament this year. It was mostly they're right in that 2 to 5 range, pretty consistently every tournament. So overall, kind of like Ryan's saying, anytime, you start a tournament out already 13 down out to the first round, it's going to take a heck of an effort to come back. And unfortunately, they were good the rest of the tournament. They were right in that 290 to 295 stroke range every round. But when you got a team like North Texas shooting at 283 in round 2, it's going to be, in the final round, you're not going to be able to come back with those numbers. So overall, it was a bit disappointing. Looking at some of the stats here, par threes are really what kind of hurt us overall. We were 10th or 9th in the tournament in those, while we were tops in par fives with a 7 under as a team. So I think that you can look at some of those missed opportunities because we were also second in par fours. So it's really the par threes are really where we lost this tournament, which is unfortunate because I feel like we are overall, as it stands, a pretty good team in consistently hitting good par three scores. It's only really, I would say, the par fours from my memory where we've really been a little iffy this year. So that was a bit disappointing. And then individually, looking at, Cameron Carrion was very solid for us the entire tournament. She finished 1 over for the tournament, one over for the tournament. So I think that overall, we had good pieces. We did fine. It was just, we didn't have a true standout, hard carry. Last year, Ana Gonzalez was fantastic. She won the individual title. That really helped us. Well, not last year since, COVID wiped out their season, but 2 years ago, back when we were still playing golf and everything, she was really the standout performer that really drove us to that conference title. And this year we had a bunch of people. I think we had, I believe it's 3, maybe 4 road runners finished in the top 20. But we didn't have anybody in the top 5. And I think you really needed that to really secure that title this year. So now we're going to move on, of course, to what seems to be a developing soap opera, it seems like this year, which is the trials and tribulations of UTSA baseball. Are they good? Are they not? Honestly, it's really hard to tell. So, of course, we were on the road this week in Charlotte to face a top 25 squad out there. And we dropped the series 3-1, and the bullpen kind of swung back the other way from where they've been at. So 2 weeks ago against Southern Mississippi, we were terrible in the pen. Then last week against Middle Tennessee, we were great in the bullpen and starting pitching wise. And then this week we've come back around and now the bullpen's awful again. So Eddie, I want to start with you. Where is this team exactly, especially in the bullpen, where it just seems like we can't even really find a real consistent performer out there?
Honestly, I wish I could answer that question for you, but I don't think I can. It's very confusing. Like, they went 3-1 in the last series, and then they look like, they're getting their groove back. And then now it's just back to, a 500 team. I mean, 15-15, which is usually a team that you just can't define or identify what they are. So just like you said, it was the bullpen, it was the pitching. I believe in the first 3 games, we were leading, and up until like the 5th or 6th, that is where all the runs came in. And I mean, we had enough. I think the offense was okay. I know Paxton was hitting pretty good in all games, and I just don't know. It's confusing. Like, I want to know what y'all have to say, because I don't know how to explain what this team is. They're 15-15, which just lets you know that, there's really no identity here right now. But winning the last game, I just hope they can like move on to Rice with that. And that's pretty much all I got to say. But I can't give you an answer on what this team is.
Ryan?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway that I think we can walk away with this season is the inconsistency of this team. There's just weeks where, they'll go out there and they're firing on all cylinders. Like, the pitching's great, the bats are alive, the defense is great, and then there's just games or series like this with Charlotte, and it's kind of like just leaves you, scratching your head as to what's going on out there, what's happening. I mean, I think, yeah, like Eddie had said, they were up, I think, in the day of the doubleheader. They were leading on both of those games at late into the both of the doubleheaders, and they just ended up surrendering the lead in the last like 2 or 3 innings. And that seems to be the trend as what we've noticed throughout the season. I think that was the big thing with LSU. It was like giving up leads really late in the game. And I mean, granted, it was extra inning games, but still, you're giving away runs to bring teams back in when you finally pull away and you get a little bit further. But that's definitely what I guess this team's identity is. Going into like the conference tournament, I don't know if this team has enough to get it past the higher tier teams, I would say, of this conference, like the Southern Miss and the Charlottes, because I mean, obviously it's clear that those teams have UTSA's numbers. But I mean, at the end of the day, baseball is full of like psychological type stuff, and it's like a psychological game. So I mean, all it takes is them to get that little spark, and whatever it needs to be to wake themselves up, and that could potentially be the thing that can drive them further past these Charlottes, or past these Southern Miss teams that have basically mopped the floor with them in the series. So I mean, the last game against Charlotte was a good indicator of what this team can do. I mean, even the second to last game of the doubleheader, they did really well. I mean, they had it all the way up until the very end. So, I mean, if this team can clean up its pitching errors and woes, I think we'll see a really, really nice, well-balanced team that, will hit their stride, hopefully.
Yeah, just kind of following on with what you both are saying, it really is, and we've said this before, the consistency of this team is their inconsistency. In that, again, the starting pitching also this week kind of took a step back. Like a lot of the guys like Chomko and Easterling, that were really good against Middle Tennessee, didn't have as good outings this time out. And then it's the bullpen. I mean, so many great baseball teams are killed by the lack of being able to get outs late in games. And that seems to be the issue here. I want to turn attention to game 2, where we're riding the momentum. We take a 2-run lead early in the first. We tack on another run. Then they kind of close the gap back down to 3-2. We get another run in the 5th and the 6th, and we're up 5-3 at that point. And we're like, okay, things are going good. In comes Guajardo, who went out against Middle Tennessee and was fantastic. And then he just gets run out of the building for 7 runs, and they just can't get an out. I mean, I want to say that they had 1 out in the inning. Like, they started off fine. Mason, I believe, allowed 2 runners on, and then they turned to Guajardo, and just an out could not be found. Like, balls just kept finding the gaps. And it's just, and that was kind of the theme for both of those games of the doubleheaders is we had it, and we lost it. And I mean, credit to Charlotte. There's a reason why they're nationally ranked. They are a good baseball team. And the bullpen it's that inconsistency. Like Hunter Mason, it seems like every other game you're asking, is this the good Hunter Mason game or is this a bad Hunter Mason game? Because when Mason is on, he is fantastic. And then there are just days where he just can't seem to find an out. And that's basically a trend with our entire bullpen. When we're on, the bullpen shuts everybody down. When we are off, everybody is off. Like, there have been way too many times this season where Hallmark has had to make multiple changes in an inning out of the bullpen. Unless it's a strategy play, you should not be doing that if you have a good bullpen. You should be able to put a guy in and say, give me 3 outs. And they will do that for you. And that has not been the case this year with the team. And it's really hurting us because the offense is there most days. It seems like we're good for 1 game a series where the offense kind of takes a minute to find itself. But other than that, we can guarantee usually somewhere between 5 and 10 runs seems to be like our good average. And when you have a team that can score like that and you're 15-15, that hurts because you have potential. And we're hanging with good teams. It's just you're being constantly let down by either inconsistent starting pitching, an inconsistent bullpen, or the one day where the pitching is good is the day that the batting decides that it's going to, have its little glitch in the system moment. So it's a frustrating team, mostly because you see the potential there. Like, this is a very talented team. It's just there's some issues that sink a lot of great teams, and I feel like that's applying to this team right now. So, Ryan, I especially agree with your sentiment. Like, I look at it like, okay, are we a decent team? Yes. Can we go to the conference tournament and hang with a Charlotte or a Southern Mississippi? That's a much harder question. Like, I don't know if they have that in them right now. But this is the beauty of baseball. Like you're saying also, it's a mental game. Things can change. You can fix things. It's just they need to be fixed soon because, there are only so many games left in the season. And now's the time, right? Like, we're going up against Rice at home this week. We destroyed them earlier this year. Like, if ever there is a time to get right and get your confidence back, it's this series. And then they go and play UAB, who I don't know for sure how their season's going so far. But overall, I mean, I feel like UAB is a team we can beat. So, I don't know. I'm hopeful, but we need to pick up the pace now. Time's running out.
If any series is good right now to help build confidence, it would be against Rice at home because going against them last time and just completely, having that great of a showing 4 games in a row. I mean, they did lose that one, but they did really well those other 3. I think having them here at home and going up against Rice and hopefully winning those games, that should be easy, confidence builder and, help to build off of for future games.
Yeah. And UAB is currently 12-24. So that is a very nice 8-game stretch where you can rack up some wins and then be ready for Old Dominion 3 weeks from now, who are 27-7 and are looking very dangerous.
Is the UAB series at home or are they going to Alabama?
The UAB series is on the road, and then we're back home for Old Dominion.
Back at home for Old Dominion. All right. So, 8 games to get it in check before Old Dominion comes to town. Nice. All right.
All right, now moving on. Earlier this week during a press conference, UTSA's head football coach Jeff Traylor announced that the spring game is going to happen, although no set time has been determined. So, Ryan, I wanted to ask you, what are your hopes for this game this year? I know that spring games can sometimes be a little more anecdotal than everything, but I mean, we're all football starved here. We're always ready for college football to come back, and spring games always kind of mark that beginning of college football really coming back. So what are your expectations and hopes for UTSA spring game this season?
My biggest hope for the spring game this season is seeing the development of the passing attack and seeing which quarterback is going to step up to the plate and help deliver, that type of offense for us. We have some amazing wide receiver weapons that clearly show they can, ball out each and every week depending on who the quarterback is, and that's great. So my biggest takeaway, or what I hope to take away from this spring game, is seeing that quarterback development and seeing, how the chemistry is with like Zachary Franklin and Joshua Cephas and Tyke Kellogg, and how that development's going to be. I really want to see a very potent passing attack this year. I know we got Sincere McCormick in the backfield. That's great and all, but I really love our wide receiver targets, and I just really hope whoever's going to be the starting quarterback for us this year is going to be able to, deliver and, be consistent each and every week, and hopefully injury free this year. So that's the biggest thing for me.
Eddie, I want to go to you.
Yeah, to bounce off of that, I mean, I think we pretty much will see Frank Harris leading the way, correct? And I know, oh, that's actually questionable. I know he had surgery in one of the interviews that I was watching. He had a disclosed surgery, nothing huge, but I think to talk about the spring game, I think we just need to see, get their feet wet. There wasn't one last year, correct?
There was not, because all spring program was wiped out.
Yeah.
So it's actually good just to have one. But yeah, I agree. It's just for them to get their feet wet. We know we have McCormick, who I think he should probably take some light reps because we know what he could do. But it's good to see if we can showcase, maybe the 20 quarterbacks that we have on the roster. Maybe to see that would be cool. And yeah, but just pretty much to get their feet wet, it's going to be exciting. I feel like we need this after not having one last year. And it's a good chance to see our super seniors, feed off their energy and their veteran experience now. And just to see, the other players get a little bit of experience, and then hopefully leading into a very successful season actually after last year. So I think this would be very huge for them.
Yeah, I think overall my number one hope and expectation for the game is everybody gets out healthy. No matter what, just no major injuries to anybody. Just get through the spring game healthy. I think that's my number one hope. And Ryan, I'm kind of mad at you because you stole my point. I want to see a improved passing attack this year, because there were so many times last year in some of the bigger games where our running, McCormick was doing his work, but they were keying in on him, and there were opportunities for us to push the ball downfield, kind of open up the passing game, and we were sometimes not as adept at doing it as we probably should have been. When you have opportunities, you need to be able to hit them, and I feel like a couple times last year we kind of let those slip by us. So I want to see, especially with Ogle Kellogg, I think establishing himself this season as more of the outside the numbers kind of guy to pair with Franklin and Joshua Cephas. I feel like if ever there was a time to see a renewed passing attack, it's this season right now. And so I'm with you. I want to see, okay, can we make the plays when we absolutely need to get on 3rd and 8? Can we get a first down without having to rely on Sincere to make a ridiculous jump cut and take it 80 yards to the house or something? I want to see the passing attack be able to convert 3rd and long and be a weapon to make defenses think, maybe we shouldn't stack 7 or 8 in the box on Sincere every down. So that's my major hope here. And then on defense, I want to see that edge that we had last season, right? Towards the back half of the year, I felt like the defense was really the thing keeping us in most of the games that we were playing. And that was a big improvement over the beginning of the season, where it was very much dear God, we're holding on for life right now because it's a roller coaster, especially the Texas State game, I think comes to mind, where it's we can't stop a wet, paper towel out there. But by the end of the season, man, we were a unit, and we were holding Louisiana. The only reason we were in that game there at the end of the season was because of the defense playing so well that second half. So I think that I want to see that defensive edge in the spring game. Okay, Obviously, we have the co-defensive coordinators now that were really running the show the back half of the season. So what does a full offseason under them look like? That's what I'm very interested to see. And then, of course, I got to give a shout out to Hunter Duplessis. I just want to see him kick a couple field goals through the uprights, just get the new streak going and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, we know what he could do. He's a beast, so we know he's going to do good.
Now we're going to turn attention to the tennis courts now with the men, of course, as we discussed last week, finished up their season against Oregon. And then the women's team came through on Friday and picked up a tight 4-3 win over A&M Corpus Christi, which is pretty big for them considering we discussed their record last week. So, Eddie, I wanted to ask you, who's going to be the major X factor for this team now that we're moving into the conference tournament?
How about what's going to be the major impact? And I think just keeping the consistency and relying on doubles. And then hopefully singles can just mesh it out to 500, because I think doubles has been doing good, particularly like all year. And I think if they can just keep it going in doubles and singles could figure it out. We know Alexandra's going to do good. She's probably the one X factor. But I think, just staying dominant in doubles, and then hopefully singles can come out on top.
Ryan?
Yeah, to piggyback off of Eddie here, I agree with him. I think the performance of Alexandra Weir is going to be the biggest X factor for this team in the conference tournament. I mean, she fared pretty well against her opponent versus A&M Corpus Christi, and she helped lead the way. So I think she'd be a huge X factor heading into the conference tournament.
Yeah, I think personally for me, one of the bigger X factors is probably going to be Keegan McCain. Like, we know that Zlatarova is going to be excellent. We know that Weir is going to be excellent for us. And then you start looking like, okay, so that's 2 points, right? Like, you're playing, best of 7. Say we win the doubles point, which we've been doing, I would say pretty consistently this season. That gets us to 3. So I'm looking for who is the one other player that can get us a point that's really going to be able to get it done for us. And I look at our options, and they're a little sparse. That's probably why we're, under 500 this season, is we don't really have that third singles player that's been able to really get us a point consistently. McCain is probably the person I look at. She's 7-7 in singles play on the year. And so far in her last 4, she is she's 2-1. And then there was one game that didn't finish. But she's come on really strong. Like, beginning of the year where she started out kind of slow, and now she's kind of coming back through, really playing well. So I think that she's probably the X factor in this conference tournament. We're going up against UAB in round 1 before going on to, I believe it's Old Dominion is our second round opponent on a bye if we manage to get through. So I think Keegan McCain is probably our big X factor here of, okay, if we're going to win and 4-3, I mean, you can win 4-3. What matters at the end of the day is you win. So I think that McCain is probably our most likely option to be able to come through and land on the right side of that 7-7 record. So I'm looking at her as my major X factor for this team's success in this tournament. Because if we get that third singles option, I think we're really good, because doubles has been excellent so far, like you guys have been saying. Yeah. Moving over to the track and field side of things, this team has just been really consistent and dominant, I would say, against USA and like more of our opposition all year long. And that continued, of course, during our home invitational. We managed to rack up 22 podium finishes, highlighted by a couple of really nice gold medal wins. And Eddie, I want to start with you. What's been your overall impression so far about how this outdoor season's going, and especially from this home meet?
I believe it's going really good. I know we had Bashiru Abudali. Don't want to botch the name. I know he had a record-setting day, and I believe we had 4 or 5 winners. Triple jump. Grant Zalik. I don't want to botch these last names here, but the impressions have been very good. I mean, I think we've been doing pretty solid. Other than the other sports teams we have that have been very inconsistent, I think we can really rely on track and field this year, and they're doing very good at this point in the season.
Ryan, I know that you were there to cover the event and take some photos for us, and I know that you were there for the throwing competitions mostly. So what were your impressions so far while you were there?
I will say, so completely off topic, but I've never seen hammer throw in person, and I was so like in shock to watch hammer throw take place in person. And I will say, if y'all ever have the chance to see it, y'all gotta watch it. It's a crazy event. But yeah, I mean the throwers were doing pretty well. There was just some really good stiff competition there. There was some guy from UTRGV that was just like doing it phenomenal in the shot put. I think he ended up walking away with gold in that event. But overall, the throwers did really well. But I will say Sam Healy has just been dominating this season in the long jump. I He's a senior from Ireland, and he's just literally been leaping away with first place finishes this year. So I think, you know, heading into the remainder of the season, like with this type of confidence and like all of our trio of like, you know, all our jumpers that are doing this well, I think you know, our field events are looking really strong right now. Our field event teams are really good at what they're doing. So I mean, I love it. I love to see it. Our track team is really good this year. So
Yeah, I am so glad that you brought up Sam Healy, of course, because he and Christy LaRue, now I believe that's 2 weeks back-to-back gold, silver finishes, which is just absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, hey, like you brought up with Abdullahi, I mean, he is the one sprinter I would say that I can consistently count on the men's side of things. Like, yeah, he's going to win medal. Might be gold, might be silver. He's going to be right there. Everything. And then I also want to give a shout out to Abby Bali, of course. She registered her second straight win in the 1500 meter. Absolutely fantastic. I know that we had a athlete of the week feature on our last semester and everything, but just overall, I'm so impressed with this team. Like every single week, it seems like we're in contention in some events. And I think that that's really huge for us. And I think that overall, I've been very impressed with this season so far. I think our outdoor season has probably been more successful than our indoor season by far. And I think that going forward, I mean, I don't see how this doesn't continue. I mean, like we're so strong, we're so consistent. This isn't, and it's the same people every single week doing it. So like, it's not exactly like, oh, we caught lightning in a bottle just once. Like it's just been so consistent. I mean, Maya Campbell in the throwing ring for us. I mean, I don't understand how she hasn't managed to win a gold medal yet, just because, I mean, she's just been breaking all of our school records. So I know a gold medal is coming her direction. And then Faith Roberson, again, has just been so consistent in the sprints for the women. So, I mean, overall, I'm just so impressed by this team.
Yeah, 5 winners. I mean, that's very impressive.
All right, now we're going to move on from the UTSA-centric news, but we need to talk about another major college event that is coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, the FCS playoffs are here. So, Ryan, who are you running with out there this year?
You know, it was kind of tough looking at the field. There's a lot of, you know, traditional powerhouses in this, you know, in the, I guess it's called the bracket. I didn't even realize there was a bracket, but yeah. And then, you know, my gut wants to stick with a Texas team and go with Sam Houston State, but I think I'm going to have to go with James Madison. I know they won the title, you know, like I think 3 years now it was, and they upset North Dakota State. Clearly, North Dakota State is not dominant this season, but I'm sure they'll be back soon. But I think James Madison has the tools to be successful throughout this playoff and be able to dominate the competition. I mean, they only played 5 games this year, with some games getting canceled because of COVID. But I mean, most of their games, they were, you know, able to just run away with the games. So, yeah, I think I'm going with the Dukes this year.
Eddie, what about you? Who you riding with?
Not North Dakota State, but South Dakota State. I'm gonna have to probably go with them. I believe they've been playing really good, and I don't think the only loss they have to North Dakota, I don't think they get out of Missouri State. And even if they do, I think James Madison's just going to roll over them. And I think they'll get over Holy Cross and whoever, Weber and Southern. So I think they'll easily get there. It's going to be interesting once they get into the championship. I agree. James Madison is very, very strong, but I think South Dakota State will come on top.
All right, so first off, I do want to apologize to the great people of Fargo, North Dakota. I believe I've jinxed your team because every time I pick a team to run with for a year, it seems to always fall apart. And it feels like that's what happened with the Bison of North Dakota State this season. I felt like, going chalk, I was going to be fine this year, but nope. This is the one year they have bad year when I choose to rep them as my FCS school. So apologies for them. Now, as for who's actually going to win this thing, I just feel like it's got to be South Dakota State. I mean, they beat North Dakota State in the season. They're the number one seed coming in. They've looked really solid all year long. Kind of like Ryan, you're saying James Madison only played 5 games this season. So they're not, I would say, as dialed in as you would normally be during a regular season. So I think that South Dakota State, they're battle tested. I mean, for whatever reason, Dakota just owns FCS football. Like South Dakota State, North Dakota, and North Dakota State are strong every single season. So I think that going forward, it's a little boring, picking the number one overall seed in the tournament. Yeah. But I feel like South Dakota State, this is the Jackrabbits kind of get it done and establish Dakota supremacy. I don't even know if that's a term over there, but, they're going to win the battle for Dakota, I guess. And major news, of course, coming out of the NCAA, of course, and that there are new transfer rules that have been approved by the NCAA, and I believe it's going to the board of directors for the final, signed, sealed, and delivered. It's going to massively alter the transfer process in that undergraduates who had previously been forced to sit out a season once they transfer to a new school, and unless there were extenuating circumstances, which, let's be honest, over the course, I would say the past couple of years have been loosened more and more as, athletes have been starting to exercise their options more, of course. But these new rules are going to provide the ability for a one-time transfer to another institution that does not require student athletes to sit out a season. Absolutely huge development here. Eddie, I wanted to get your reaction to that.
I don't know. It's kind of tricky. I feel like more people are going to transfer or more students are going to transfer, and I like it. How they don't get to sit and watch a whole year, which is not bad. It's not. I don't think it's smart to just transfer somewhere and immediately demand. Well, now you can, and immediately demand a spot and just to get in the rotation. And I don't think that's gonna mesh well. Mostly because at what point of the season is there going to be a transfer or before the season? Usually people already have roster set, depth chart set, rotation set. And I feel like that's the only thing that's going to be a negative is that, someone could just quickly insert themselves and actually want to do something. And I think that will mess up the meshing with coaching staff. But it's going to be interesting to see how, they figure this out.
Ryan?
Yeah. So I honestly think it's a good idea because I feel like, as of recently, most I feel like the thing that's been happening a lot is dudes are transferring after a year anyways. So I think, allowing these guys to have a one free ticket to transfer wherever, they want and then be able to be eligible is going to be huge in, determining if they're a good fit for that program or if they should even, be where they're at. So I think it's a good idea. But one of the things that really struck me was the whole Luke Ford deal. Do y'all remember that?
I think I remember this. Yeah.
So he was a freshman at Georgia, and then some family stuff happened, and he wanted to go back home to Illinois. So then he ended up enrolling in Illinois, and he got there in the spring, so he played spring ball with them, obviously. But for the fall season, the NCAA basically denied him the right to play with them that season, and that he was going to have to sit out. Versus there was other dudes that were transferring to other colleges, and boom, they were getting instant eligibility. So I think having this uniform set rule is going to make a good example of these types of situations. I think in Luke Ford's situation, I think he should have been granted eligibility. I mean, I think his grandmother got really sick and he wanted to play closer to his family, and the NCAA basically said no. Versus I mean, the other guys that are just transferring just to go to powerhouses and then try to take a starting job. I feel like that's not fair. But I mean, at the end of the day, the NCAA is not fair at all and crap. But that's a whole different story for a different time. but yeah, I think having this like one uniform system is going to be, make it even for everybody, no matter which school you're transferring to or where you're going to, or how big of name recognition you are. Like, I think it's just, fair enough.
Yeah, I think overall, looking at this, the idea that you had to sit out a season never quite really gelled with me. Like, why do I have to sit out a year if I'm going someplace new when I'm basically already kind of uprooting? And they've tried to like frame it as, oh, the student needs time to acclimatize to his new, school, get used to his surroundings, etc. I mean, like, come on, really? It's that, we're still treating our student athletes more as students when really we're making billions of dollars off of them in many ways. So in some ways, and then also, like Ryan, like you're saying, they already have been doing this now. It's like guys have been transferring after a year now for like the past decade. I would say is really what's started to come up. And some of them do it. Like I know there are a bunch of exceptions built in for like cause, etc. Of like a reason, a good reason in the NCAA's opinion why they should transfer. And in a lot of cases, yeah, okay, sure. But then there are also some where I'm like, really? Like, they really meet that criteria? And then, like you're saying with like the Luke Ford thing, it's like that's probably one that should have been, granted, signed, sealed, and delivered. So I think that I agree with you that having this uniform policy is a good thing, and I like the idea that undergraduates, you get one time, you get one. It's not like, oh, I'm going to waffle and I'm going to, go to 5 different teams and everything. It's like you get one free one, and then it's back to the old system of sitting out. And I think that that's probably a good way to handle it. Now, I know that there has been some debate ever since these rules got announced a couple of days ago about like which colleges this really helps. So, Ryan, in your opinion, do you think that this helps the bigger schools like Alabama be able to poach, say, a Javon Jackson, for example, from UTSA to go play for them? Or do you think it helps the smaller schools with the possibility of maybe some of those end of bench guys on like a Duke basketball team or an Ohio State football team maybe decide to come elsewhere now to play when they don't have to worry about sitting out for a season in their prime?
I honestly feel like it's going to help out like the Power 5 schools because they'll be able to, entice these top players and be like, hey, you were a stud at this level, come over here and we'll work out something to where you could be like a starter. You get this much playing time and you don't have to sit out now. So, your name will get out there like faster. So I think that you'll start to see like mid-major colleges start to cultivate these, star players, and then the bigger schools snatch up those mid-major, university players. And, unfortunately, I feel like that's the direction that this might end up going. But I mean, who knows? Maybe the, General 5 or the, lesser known schools will actually be able to be competitive and grab some top-notch, like, bench warmer players that, just needed a shot. So I think time will really tell once this rule like completely gets into effect and we start to see some transfers. That's when we'll really be able to, decide if it was good or not.
Eddie?
Yeah, I agree. One positive that we could probably get from this is how players who like are in stacked teams already and don't really get a chance to play and they get to take off, like how Cam Newton did it when he was at Florida. He went to Blinn and he went to Auburn, and I mean it's been going on for quite a while. I mean Baker Mayfield, Texas Tech to Oklahoma, Randy Moss, Notre Dame to Florida State to Marshall. Like we've seen this before, and I think you're going to see a lot of it. Like, and then another one, just Kyler Murray, Texas A&M to Oklahoma. Like I think we're going to see a lot of this more. Just because they have a chance now. If they know they got, one of the best quarterbacks starting and they're not going to get their chance, I mean, you might as well just transfer so that way you can shine somewhere else.
Yeah, you both bring up really good points. I think I tend to fall on the opposite side of you, Ryan. I tend to think that, well, yes, I think it's inevitable that you are going to see some of the top line mid-major stars go to the bigger programs, the Blue Bloods, etc. I also think that there are a lot more end of bench guys on major programs that are just waiting for that shot than there are mid-major stars. So I think what you'll see is maybe like a talent, more dispersion and equilibrium in a way, in that I think there are going to be a lot more guys coming down the stream to go play for a mid-major and star than there will be stars that can move up to be that Power 5 Alabama, North Carolina, Duke, et cetera, kind of player. So I think that I tend to come down on, I think that this will benefit the smaller schools. However, I do know that there are definitely going to be, like you're saying, they're going to be guys. I mean, like, come on, if you were, a quarterback at a mid-majors conference, let's just use, I don't know, let's say Middle Tennessee. Okay. Let's say that there's, the next Trevor Lawrence suddenly pops up at Middle Tennessee. There's no way he's going to stay at Middle Tennessee forever if an Alabama comes knocking and it's like, hey, you want to come play for us and be a god in Tuscaloosa? Like, you're going to take that gig, right? Like, no matter how good Middle Tennessee is for you, when an opportunity like that comes calling, you're going to take it. And I honestly don't think that anybody should ever be mad at somebody for taking an opportunity like that. I mean, like, come on. But
So
at the
Nick
same
Saban's
time,
about to go crazy.
I think, I think that is one major thing is the thing that Saban is going to get guys, but I also think he's going to lose guys because, I mean, Alabama brings in so many 5-star recruits every year. Some of those guys are just wasting away on a bench. And I think without that threat of a year of having to sit out football, I think that they are more than willing to maybe take that risk. I think the bar for wanting to transfer is way lower with this new rule. So I do think that you're going to see some guys that would have been perfectly content to be, 8th on the Duke bench, for example, in basketball. Now, I could be 8th on the Duke bench and, play 10 minutes a night, or I could go down to UTSA, for example, and I could be the leading man. Like, I feel like some guys would be more willing to take that now that they don't have to sit out a year.
Yeah, I agree.
Makes a lot of sense.
Overall, though, I think that this really does change recruiting as a whole because now I think without that backboard, now it's going to be every year is just going to be a battle to not only get guys to come in, but keep guys in-house, especially your best players. So I think that this is going to be a very interesting thing. And Ryan, like you're saying, we don't know, right? Like we aren't really going to see how this really kind of shakes out and kind of materializes until we see, a couple years of it. Because like graduates can transfer without penalty, and the grad transfer market I would say is pretty robust in comparison to undergraduates that have to sit out a year. But it isn't like crazy. It's not like undergraduates graduate students from mid majors are just transferring en masse to Alabama to go play. Like some do, but not everybody does. So I think that who knows? Maybe with undergraduates it'll be the same sort of thing. I tend to think it's probably going to be a little more movement going on just because they're undergraduates, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think you will see a spike definitely in all this.
I would have to agree with that. All right, moving on from the college scene, now we're going to move over to the pros, and we're going to start off talking about the NBA. Now, I'm sure you guys have been seeing this. Steph Curry is on an absolute tear right now. He's shooting the ball probably better than I think I've ever seen him shoot it before. I mean, so consistent. I know that I believe it was a couple of days ago, he put up his 6th game of the season with 10 made 3-pointers. I want to say this is like the 3rd game in the last, I would say 2 weeks that he's managed to do that. Just for reference, no other NBA player in their career has more than 5 10 3-pointer games. So, I mean, like he's just doing stuff that's never been done before. And they're starting to, and I know that last game in Philly, he was getting some MVP chance. So, Eddie, I want to start with you. Does Steph deserve to be in the MVP conversation, even though the Warriors are still kind of fighting around that 8, 9, 10 seed range for its spot in the play-in tournament?
Yes, he does deserve to be in the conversation. I think you get to realize how much a player means when you see like his back against the wall, and what can this player do by himself? Because we know what he could do with Klay Thompson. When Draymond Green was actually good, and Kevin Durant, but he's in the same position as as Joker, Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray went down. Now you see, and he's my leading MVP candidate still. Jamal Murray went down. You see his like action of play raise, and he's almost averaging a triple-double. So we're seeing Steph now going like crazy berserk. I think he's averaging like 40 points in the last 4 games. And I know he had 53 against the Nuggets. So definitely does deserve to be in the conversation. Now, will he get it? It's a different story. But just like you said, his 3-point performance is kind of crazy. He had 10 against the Sixers, shooting for 17, 11 and 19 against the Celtics, and then 11 again against the Thunder, 10 against the Nuggets. This dude's ridiculous. Like I don't understand what he did to be blessed with such like a sniper shot from anywhere around the court. And you got to respect like just him like being respected at half court, double team at half court is like enough to get my MVP vote. Because who does it? Who demands a double team coming up half court? This dude does. But as far as is he in the race? Yes. Will he be MVP? That's a different story. I still got Nicola. I still got the Joker.
Ryan, does Steph deserve to be in the conversation, even though the team is languishing down there trying to fight for their lives for a play-in spot?
Yeah, obviously his recent play of late has definitely he deserves a little bit of recognition. He's playing out of his mind right now. He's basically dragging this Warriors team into a play-in spot. So he deserves to be in the conversation. But like Eddie said, I think the Joker is running away with this competition this season, man. Like just like you said with Murray going down and him stepping up and becoming that, all around leader for the team. And that's what you want out of players like that. That's like the next step that you want to see from, those types of guys on your teams that are like differentiates them from like being like really good players to like superstars. So I think, the Joker's definitely leading the way in, the MVP race this season. But Steph he deserves a little bit of recognition. He's been playing out of his mind.
Yeah, I think that overall, Joker is still my guy too. Like, I feel like overall his body of work this season has been great and he's avoided injury. Unlike, I would say LeBron and Embiid were probably neck and neck at the top, and then they both got hurt, kind of killed things a bit. And Joker's just been that consistent, amazingly solid player. And especially after this Murray issue, Eddie, like you're saying, and Ryan, it's like he's really stepped up as that leader ever since Murray got hurt. Now, I think the question is always, what is the most valuable player award? Is the player that's most valuable for your team, or is it the best player on the best team? I feel like with Giannis, it was kind of starting to subscribe in some ways to the best player on the best team probably gets the edge over the guy that might be, the best player on like the 4th or 5th seed. This season, we don't really have that. You look at, Philly in the East and it's Embiid, but he got hurt. You look at the Nets, it's 3 of them, and they're all hurt at different points of the season. They're all sitting out for, their own reasons, everything. And then out West, it's, Utah, which you wouldn't say really has like a bona fide MVP. It's kind of like Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, and Rudy Gobert just all kind of doing their own thing just as a unit. So I think that you look at this season, it's like, yeah, the Nuggets can be the 5th seed, and, Jokic is obviously the MVP favorite at this point. And I look at Steph and I'm like, yeah, you're playing for a play-in spot, but you're playing out of your dang mind right now, just like absolutely shooting the lights out of the stadium. And I don't know, like Jokic is my guy right now, but let's just say hypothetically Steph keeps doing this the rest of the season and drags his team. Like, I mean, they're a ways up, but like, let's just say hypothetically they just go on this massive run and they get up to like the 6th seed or something. Like, at that point, I'm kind of like, man, I feel like Steph almost deserves it. I mean, like, he leads the NBA in scoring now. He passed Bradley Beal, which, on one hand, good for Steph. On the other hand, man, Bradley, you were so close. You could have gotten it done, and he still could. But, I think that overall it's just like, man, if Steph keeps this going, I think he obviously deserves to be there. He's probably my number 2 right now just because he's healthy and, like, he's just carrying his team on his back. But if they keep it going, I don't know. I might change my vote. Steph might be my guy.
I agree. That's what I was about to say, is if he keeps it going, and he ends the season like this on the hot hand, I agree. I think I'll pick Steph.
Yeah. Now, I will say it's probably contingent. They need to make the play-in at least. Like, if he keeps this going and he goes out on his shield, like, that's one thing. But if he keeps it going and they, fall short of the play-in, even despite all he does, I don't know. Like, I'm weird about giving MVPs to people on losing teams. Like, say you lose the finals, but you win finals MVP. That's always so awkward to me. I don't like that. So, like, a team missing the playoffs and the dude still wins MVP, I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch for me. I feel like you need to make the playoffs at least. I don't need you to be the number 1 seed. I think that the idea that the best player on the best team is always the MVP isn't always right. But I feel like you need to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
I think they'll make it with the 10 play-in. They're just behind the Spurs 1 game, or they're on top of the Spurs 1 game.
They're up.
Yeah, and I don't see the Pelicans making it. So I think if they just Steph keeps doing this, I mean, I don't see why they can't. I mean, they got the Wizards next. They do have the Nuggets and the Mavericks, but I think their schedule looks pretty fair. I mean, they got the Kings, Wizards, Timberwolves, Pelicans, Thunder,
That's a pretty light
and
schedule.
yeah, and I mean, I think they could do. They got the Rockets as well, so their schedule's looking pretty easy. I mean, they're playing a Nuggets team without Jamal Murray, a Jazz team without Mitchell. I think the only team that they lose to here and bad is the Suns. Other than that, I mean, they play the Thunder twice, the Rockets. I think they can make it in. The Wizards and the Kings.
If there's a time to make a push, it's this stretch right here for them.
Yeah, I think they can do it, and especially with the 10 playing. Of course, if it wasn't, then I'd say they're out.
Now we're going to move over to the Eastern Conference here. And Ryan, unfortunately, of course, James Harden suffered a bit of a setback with the hamstring injury, is now back to being out indefinitely after sounding like he was going to be so close. And then KD, of course, picked up a thigh injury a couple days ago. So I wanted to start with you. Will the Nets' perpetual injuries really hurt them come postseason time? Because they really haven't had a chance to really figure things out as a unit. As I think we saw with Miami, sometimes that can really hurt you if you don't know how to play with your big three.
Yeah, just like you said, like the experience of playing together is everything, especially when it comes to crunch time in the playoffs. And you need those guys to work together and be accustomed to everything in general. Like I think that's going to hurt them a lot. And then also like just the severity of all of the injuries. Like, could this be something that just lingers throughout the rest of the season? Could this be like an injury that just pops up again in the playoffs? Like, those are all going to be factors that could determine into how successful the Nets can be in the postseason. I can't believe like KD is just this like injured all the time. It's crazy. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't get it, man. Like, it's just insane to me how injured he gets. But yeah, I feel like it does hurt their chances a little bit to be successful in the postseason.
Eddie?
I think it will hurt them. Most not particularly in the East. I think when this team gets back together, full health, if they ever do, and they finally get a chance to mesh together, I think they could still, glide through the East. The really only team you got to worry about is the 76ers and the Bucks. Because after that, I mean, the Hawks are in fourth. Like, that should just tell you how the East is. So I think they can get through. Right now, if they were to get into the playoffs, they'd play the Heat. So I'd be kind of scared of that. That's kind of like the dark horse of the East. Um, so, but if they were to go against like in the finals against the Lakers, which I think we're gonna get there once AD comes back, once LeBron comes back, with Andre Drummond now, like they would struggle. But they definitely need to play together. I mean, KD, it's kind of unfortunate for KD. I mean, started off pretty strong, and then his injury with his Achilles came back, and then now he barely returns to basketball, and he just took like a nick on the knee, and he's sidelined. Kyrie, we don't even know what's going on with Kyrie. He just has his own little attitude problem, like always. Like he thinks he's bigger than basketball. Like I never understand like Kyrie Irving ever. Like he needs to get over that the world's not flat. Like he just needs to get over it. And then James Harden is I mean he was pretty much doing pretty good as much as I don't like the guy. I mean he fit in pretty well and he was in the MVP conversation at one point. But that was without KD for the most part. And there's only 13, 14 games left, I believe. So they definitely need to pick it up quick and play together because if they play the Heat, I think they're in trouble.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, it's kind of hard to say that this isn't going to hurt him, right? Like, anytime you aren't on the court with the guys that you're expected to go win a title with, is going to be troublesome. And Ryan, like you're bringing up, just to say these injuries aren't going to keep happening, right? Because like they're nothing like major, but they're the little injuries. They're the soft tissue injuries that are really hard to get rid of, like in a timely manner. I mean, like we've seen with like a calf injury can leave somebody out for weeks and months on end. So I think
I mean,
that
AD.
yeah,
Look at
exactly.
AD. I mean, he's been out since February.
So I think that these injuries are going to catch up, and I think it's really going to come into play end of game situations in the playoffs. They always seem to crop up on the way to a title. Who is the guy at the end of the game that's going to take a big shot? And the issue is the Nets have 3 guys that have proven before they can take the big shot. However, you need to figure out which one is going to take the big shot for you. And if you aren't playing together in those end of game situations, maybe during the playoffs is not the right time to, just be starting to figure that out. Because I think we always see with a big 3 is that there's an adjustment period. And it's usually early in a season where your 3 superstars learn to play together. And I think that you can look at Miami in 2011 when Dirk went in and just took their lunch money, that, sometimes it takes a while, and you can only really, once you gel, you're good. But if you don't know how to quite play together is when you can be stunned by a team that only has, say, 1 or 2 guys that are really backing you up. So I look at this Nets team and I'm seeing these injuries piling up, and I'm like, are they going to be, because you don't want to figure out during the playoffs, right? You don't want that to be your adjustment period. And the fact that, Harden's now out indefinitely, KD picked up a thigh injury, and Kyrie is doing his thing. And of course, our next topic, we're going to get to him. Everything didn't even get a chance to gel with them. Like, these guys I'm worried about them in the sense that, I'm with you, Eddie, in that in the East, maybe not as big a problem. But the West, even if it's not the Lakers, they have some killer teams out there that I think would give them a lot of issues. Like, personally, I'm almost rooting for the Sun and Jazz at this point just because I think it'd be fun. But, if it's the Lakers, it's the Lakers.
Yeah, it's just I would agree with you on that. I just hate to see, a number 1 and a number 4 team just not the same anymore because Mitchell's out, Jamal Murray's out. I mean, you got to understand this team's not, you can't expect them to go far with those injuries. It's just not.
No.
It's going to be hard. I mean, you can't rely on Joker to keep giving you a 47, point games and triple doubles every game. And, with the Jazz, you pretty much just got Rudy Gobert now, who's not even a scorer, more of a rim protector. So you can't really see the Jazz being that strong. I agree with you. I think the Suns are the team to beat now, other than my, injured Lakers. Usually I would agree with you. The West is stacked. I mean, it is stacked right now. You got the Grizzlies at 8, Mavericks. It's kind of crazy to see the Mavericks at 7. Surprisingly, the Trailblazers at 6. And then, Lakers, Nuggets, Clippers, Suns, Jazz. But yeah, I would agree. It's just tough. It's sad to see like a Jazz and a Nuggets, a really good team. Those 2 teams gave like pretty much the most valiant effort in the playoffs last year. You saw Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell going at it.
Going at it.
Yeah, like going at it. Like the whole series, it was like amazing. At the end, you just see both of them on the floor with their gas tanks like empty. And especially with everything going on last year with COVID and, the whole political stuff. And it was just so much on them. And you would think that this team would be there again. And they are. The Jazz are number 1 and the Nuggets would be. But we saw what happened. But I agree with you. The only team I really worry about the Nets is the Heat if they go against them. 76ers, Bucks are Bucks. They don't change. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because you just like what you said, you don't want to go into the playoffs. Everybody's back. And it's like, okay, we need to do this. We have high expectations. We already know what we can do. We got 3 of the best players in the world, along with a pretty good, decent, deep roster. Like, let's go. Like, what if KD's still hurt? What is James hurt? James Harden's hammy is still, aggravating, not 100% yet. And you don't want to pick up the pace game 1 in the playoffs.
And as we alluded to a little earlier, of course, former Trailblazer and San Antonio Spur and former now member of the Brooklyn Nets, LaMarcus Aldridge announced his retirement due to a heart condition that he's had since his rookie season. He picked up an irregular heartbeat during a game, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and he decided that now was the time to step away. So, Eddie, I want to get a reaction, of course, to LA stepping away.
That's pretty sad. just because LaMarcus Aldridge, I didn't even know he had this since being a Trailblazer, and this dude at one point was one of the biggest forward centers in the league. I mean, he was averaging 40 points, I believe, at one point with the Trailblazers for a good stretch of games. And then when he went to the Spurs, you kind of thought that he would finally get his ring under Pop. And then you knew for a fact that he had a really good chance to finally get a ring with the Brooklyn Nets. And then this unfortunately happens. And, he made the right move. Health, life is more important than basketball. Basketball is not always going to be there. And obviously, you need to take care of your health. You saw what happened to Chris Bosh, a top player in the league, and blood clots happened and he was out, and that was it. Never saw him again. And he took that path. His health will always be a number one. And it's sad to see LaMarcus Aldridge go because he's such a great player for Trailblazer, a great Spur, and you just wanted to see him get a ring. And then this happens, unfortunately. But smart on him, especially for having it for such a prolonged time. Finally doing it at an older age I think is the right move.
Ryan?
Yeah, you never want to see a guy, have to end their career because of like a situation like this, like a heart condition. Like the first thing I thought of was Chris Bosh and the blood clots, and he had to step away from the game. Like, it's just sad to see guys step away because of, things that they can't control. You can pretty much control every other aspect of your life, but when it comes to stuff like your heart and, everything that's internal, like you never know what can happen, and they're like anything can go wrong. So it's just really sad to see like a guy of like LaMarcus Aldridge's like status have to step away like that. So it was definitely really sad when the news broke that he was signing with the Nets. I was like, man, this is his last chance to finally get a ring and end his hopefully end his career on good terms. But like seeing him go out like this is really sad, and you really feel for the guy. So hope he's all good though.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm glad that he's making the right decision to, step away for his health. Eddie, like you're saying, health is way more important than basketball or a championship or anything like that. And I'm with both of you. I mean, my heart breaks for the guy. As an athlete, you want to go out on your own terms, right? And then to have something like that, especially so suddenly, he just gets to Brooklyn, he just starts playing, and then boom, over an instant. And it's sad. He was always a class act. Like, he always conducted himself very well. I loved him on the Trailblazers. With the Spurs, things were never quite as we wanted them to be. We never were that team that we thought we could be under him. But he was still a very solid player. He conducted himself well. He was always so professional. So overall, it just heart breaks for the guy, but he's making the right decision here. All right, now moving over to the NFL draft, of course, it is almost upon us now. We are 8 days out, and there's been, pretty much a solidification of opinion here that Trevor Lawrence, is out here making donations to Jacksonville charities. He's going to be the number one pick of the draft. And then there is a very strong indication that Zach Wilson, Mr. New York, is going to go number 2 to the Jets. But then over here on the third pick with the 49ers, there's been a lot of questions of like, who are they picking with this pick? So Ryan, I want to start with you. Where are the Niners going with this third overall pick?
Man, it's pretty crazy, but I mean, there's all these rumors swirling that like they should go after like a Mac Jones or a Trey Lance type quarterback. But I mean, then I think it was Kyle Shanahan that had said that they're committed to, Garoppolo for this season. So it's like, what direction are they going? I don't want to do a safe pick. I don't want to do a conventional pick. I want to think outside the box with this one. I know they got Kittle, but I think it would be absolutely insane if they go after Kyle Pitts with the third pick. That would be nuts. So
that's crazy.
I mean, if you're going to go with Garoppolo and you're saying Garoppolo is your guy, then why not try to get him some help, get him some weapons that, might benefit him and, might rethink things, or, I mean, set up a future weapon for that organization. Because I mean, Kittle's only getting older. I mean, I know he's still going to be around for a while, but it's always good to think ahead because of injuries, and the league is crazy. It changes fast. So yeah, I'm going crazy pick Kyle Pitts, number 3 for the Niners.
Eddie, where are you going?
I don't know, honestly. Like, I don't think we've ever seen a draft like this where the first
It's
four picks are just like all
uncertain.
quarterbacks. Yeah, like
Yeah.
or all quarterback conversation or not. Like it's I personally think they go Justin Fields just because I know Shanahan had a lot of high praise for him. But I wouldn't be mad if what happens with Ryan said that they get Kyle Pitts. That'd be like awesome. That that duo right there would be the best tight end duo. Like honestly, potentially ever. Like because
Yeah.
we know Kyle Pitts is coming in as like Megatron at tight end. Like I don't even know why he's playing tight end. He can easily play receiver with his speed. Like he's a 4-3 tight end, 4-3-4-4 tight end at 6'6". If you pair him up with George Kittle, arguably the best tight end behind Travis Kelsey or neck and neck, that would be insane. And especially because George Kittle loves to block, and if you get Kyle Pitts to block as well, and being versatile with a wide receiver body, like that is going to be insane.
Yeah.
So that would be very interesting. When the time comes on the clock, I bet you the 49ers are going to be scratching their heads so hard. It is going to be tough. Like you already have a quarterback. So you know Justin if they get Justin Fields, he's not going to play this year. You know he's going to sit behind unless Jimmy G gets injured again. But if you do get Kyle Pitts, he is an instant starter right next to George Kittle. So that is actually a fantasy pick. But I think the excitement all dies down and they're just going to get Justin Fields. But it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I think overall for me, the question probably comes down to which quarterback are they taking. Like, I think the Pitts idea is crazy fun, but I
It's
don't
fun.
know if you make a jump up from 12 to 3 like the Niners do if you aren't picking a quarterback. Like, that's just conventional, like, thought process here. Like, I love the Pitts pick. I think it's so much fun, but I just don't think that that's realistically what they're going for here. And then I'm looking at quarterbacks like, okay, if Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence are off the board, you're looking at Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones as your three guys that you're most likely going for here. And on one hand, you could look at it like, okay, they're committed to Garoppolo. So maybe they look at Trey Lance, who's probably, I would say, the most raw of the three guys, as like, maybe that's the guy you go with. You know, he's been in an FCS North Dakota State school. He was absolutely fantastic against that competition, but you probably want to see a little more development out of him before you give him the job. So maybe that's the direction they go. If they don't decide to go that route and say, okay, yes, we committed to Jimmy G, but let's be honest here, you're never, unless you're a Tom Brady or, you know, one of those guys, you're not committed to a quarterback in the NFL. If you don't have a top 5 guy, you can move them in an instant. Like that seems to be the position everybody's now taking. So let's say that they do move on from Jimmy G, right? And you're looking at Mac Jones or Justin Fields. I would think that Justin Fields probably does more of what Shanahan would want him to do because he's a little more mobile. He gets out of the pocket a little more often. Mac Jones is almost purely that pocket passer. They're both great downfield throwers. That's another thing I think that Shanahan's looking for. So I think that that can't really be one of the deciding factors. Now, this actually just came out in the last couple hours. Apparently, Justin Fields has epilepsy and has been battling it for most of his life, even though it hasn't affected football. So that is maybe one of the things, because it's been a little weird for me, I would say, over the last couple months, because it almost was like, yes, Justin Fields is the number 2 quarterback. And then over the last couple of months, it's kind of been leaking down the draft boards like, maybe he's 3rd, maybe he's 4th, you know, could he be the 5th best guy? Which I thought was kind of weird because there was like, I can actually remember right after he finished beating the crap out of Clemson during the national semifinals, like, is Justin Fields better than Trevor Lawrence? Like that was kind of like that thing. And then Mac Jones came out and, you know, Alabama destroyed Ohio State and that kind of quieted down everything. But so I don't know, maybe that was a factor in it, is that, you know, he's battling this condition, which immediately they say isn't affecting him at all. But, you know, it's a little something that makes you think, maybe that's why NFL teams are like a little, you know, maybe iffy and everything. But I would draft Justin Fields over Mac Jones. I think that Fields is a better positional scheme fit for the Niners and what Shanahan loves to do in that offense. And I mean, I know that I didn't ask you guys this, but I think the Mac Jones goes to the Patriots. I think somehow, some way, Bill Belichick's going to trade up to get him. I know that's not really the Patriot way, but I just don't feel like they can go with Cam another year without any other option, because Brian Hoyer isn't going to get it done again. Okay, like if it's not Cam Newton, it's got to be somebody young that they can just hand the keys over to. I think that they'll give it to Cam to start, but I don't know if he finishes the season out with him if he struggles again. So I think that trading up for a quarterback, whether that be Mac Jones or Trey Lance, is probably where New England's going. But I think that Fields just makes too much sense for San Francisco. And I'm high on Justin Fields. I would pick him over Zach Wilson at 2 for the Jets, but that's definitely not the indication they're giving.
I mean, the Jets are the Jets, though. You never know, man.
Zach Wilson's good. Zach Wilson is good. I think Zach Wilson is staying at 2. And then it's Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and Trey Lance. I think
Do you think there's a possibility that the 49ers just say, like, screw picking at 3, let's trade back and try to get some assets? Or you think they'll go ahead and go through with the pick?
I don't know. It's weird to me because they traded up for it.
Yeah.
Like, to trade down, they would almost need to justify getting basically the assets they gave up in return. Otherwise, you're getting diminishing returns for something that, let's say they trade down to like the Broncos at 9, for example. So you basically moved up 3 slots. Unless you get the exact return or better from the Broncos, you're giving up picks to move up 3 spots, which would probably have cost you less if you just made a pick with the trade with the Broncos in that case. So I don't know. I think that they stay put and they pick somebody.
I like the Kyle Pitts pick.
I like the Kyle Pitts pick a lot. I really do.
I really like it.
It'd be insane.
I do not want to see Kyle Pitts go to Atlanta and waste his career. I don't. With Matt Ryan going out and Julio Jones both at the end of their career, he's going to be by himself.
Dive.
Like with the 49ers, he'd be set for, like, this is a win now championship team. So that'd be awesome. And if you're going to draft a quarterback, like I said, he's not going to play unless injury. So I think you trust Jimmy G. You paid him a lot of money. He's been injured. He didn't really get you the Super Bowl. The running attack did, and the defensive line, which was injured all of last year. Mm-hmm. So I don't see why you just don't get that, because they really don't have a number 1. And I know they drafted a number 1 last year, I think. I forgot his name.
Ayuk.
I'm losing his name. Ayuk, yeah, Brandon Ayuk. But she's looking pretty good, but you don't really have a number 1 yet. I think this would definitely help them be more dangerous on offense, because we know what they could do defensively. They're going to be a front 7 powerhouse team that they can ride on the defense to get you to another Super Bowl. And yeah, I think Kyle Pitts, I'm liking that actually now. And then the Falcons could pick up Justin Fields or whoever. I can see that happening.
Be interesting. Now, speaking of the NFL draft, of course, I don't know if you guys saw this today, but the NFL draft had some medical measurements leaking out this morning on some of the draft prospects. And Devontae Smiths, of course, are getting a lot of attention because he came in measuring about 6 feet flat, weighing 165, which is about 5 pounds lighter than what he said he probably was. So, Eddie, I want to start with you. How much does this even matter that he's 165?
It matters, honestly. Kind of, because you see like Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle almost at 200. So I know like Jalen Waddle's like 185, 190, and Jamar Chase is like 210. And I don't think we've seen a receiver come in at 6'1", 165. Like, he's definitely gonna need to put some more meat on the bones, because in the NFL we got linebacker safeties that could just blast you. But I still think he's a raw talent that you need to get. Even at 165, they can help that out once he gets into the league. Maybe they'll sponsor him some protein or get him something, because he's a really good player not to draft. He's still potentially, I think he's going to go to the Giants and get paired up with Kenny Golladay, because I know they got 11, I think, the Giants.
I believe you're right.
Yeah. And we know that the safe picks are going to be Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle. So I think they're going to pick them first, unless the Lions and the Dolphins say, you know what, we'll get Smith instead, and we'll see if we can get him up to weight, because we know he's got everything else. But I think it's just the weight factor is a little bit of a problem, because when have we heard of a wide receiver coming at 165, like you said? I mean, that's kind of unheard of. But I mean, he's got till August to put on at least 15, 20 pounds, which I think he can easily do. So I understand the concern, but it's not hard to put on weight. It's really not. So I think Smith is still a safe pick. You just get the weight up, and that's it. He's a bona fide good receiver. So I don't see why we should worry about it too much, but it is kind of concerning.
Ryan?
Yeah, it is a little like eye popping to see that, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's gonna end up in the league somewhere. He's gonna get with the strength and conditioning, coach. They're gonna give him a program. He's gonna be drinking all the muscle milk, everything he needs. I think he'll be ready to go by the time the season rolls around, and he'll be exactly wherever he fits it, wherever he gets drafted to. They'll have him ready to go. So I mean, it's Devontae Smith. He balled out this season. I mean, it's so early right now. It is a little concerning, but I think he'll be able to put the weight on.
Yeah, I think for me overall, I don't find it really that big of a deal. I mean, he said he was going to be 170. He's 165. Okay, let's just say hypothetically that's what he was playing at. So you're telling me he was 165, about 6 feet, and he won the Heisman and absolutely decimated everybody in his path and absolutely torched Ohio State in one half of football to win MVP without even playing because he broke his hand. Like, if it's not affecting him on the field, okay, sure. Bulk up, at
college level.
SEC still, though, and that's probably the closest comp to what you're going to most likely see in the NFL. It's not the same, but it's like the level of athletes and speed you're probably going to see out there. Now, as long as it doesn't show up on film, right? So let's just say, you're 165 and you're getting pushed around at the line of scrimmage. Okay, yeah, that's the problem. That's cause for concern, because you want to be able to get out of the line of scrimmage. That's not the issue with him. Like, he doesn't have any troubles at the line of scrimmage. I mean, like, he was an absolute beast in college. Do I think he needs to put on a little extra weight? Yeah, I mean, you're 165. That's not conducive to a long and sustainable career. Now, granted, he hasn't dealt with injuries before. I want to say the ham might have been the only time, and that wasn't even I got, rock sort of play. That was a fluke. I, just messed my fingers up. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. Do I think that he could benefit from 10 to 15 extra pounds? Yes, but I don't think it's a good idea to okay, I got to get up to 210 or something like that, because that's not his body. And anytime athletes really start to mess with that and try and pack on pounds just to pack on pounds, you can start to overrun yourself and get into trouble injury concern wise with, joints and stuff. So I think that his playing weight should be on this lighter side, but I do agree that I think he needs a couple extra pounds on there just to be safe.
Yeah, maybe 185, 190,
Yeah.
I would say so. All right, and of course, we had a major retirement in the NFL over the last couple of days with Alex Smith deciding to call it a career. Of course, the career-long San Francisco 49er, Kansas City Chief, Washington football team, etc. Ryan, I want to get your reaction, of course, to Alex Smith, of course, after coming back from that devastating knee injury 2 years ago to playing this past season, now deciding to call it a career.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is absolutely insane for coming back last season. That injury was ridiculous. If that would have happened to me, I would have just walked away. I would have been like, yeah, I'm done. I'm glad to just be alive. But the fact that he came back and, he ended up getting comeback player of the year, the football team ended up in the postseason,
mostly because of him.
Yeah, mostly because of how, well he was able to just perform and get them to that point. So, I mean, hats off to him last season, but hats off to him on a pretty good career. I mean, he was part of that Niners team that ended up in the Super Bowl. He led them to 6-2-1 to start the season before, the concussion knocked him out. And then Kaepernick ended up taking over, and, the rest is history there that season. But I mean, he was, I kind of attribute him to the success that Kansas City has now. I feel like he got there, he kind of helped right the ship, so to speak. And, Kansas City was kind of just an iffy team. And then, he's with them, and then they finally start to get things going again. And then they get, Patrick Mahomes, and, they end up winning a, Super Bowl. So I like to look at him as he helped the Chiefs get back on track and get them to where they are now. So, I mean, the guy was legit. I mean, what else? There's not much more you can say, but props to him and his retirement.
Eddie?
Man, Alex Smith is a warrior. That is all I got to say. Growing up, I am a Vikings fan, and growing up, I actually watched Alex Smith a lot. That team that the 49ers had, with Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, that defense
yeah.
was just like I love seeing that team. Like, and then Randy Moss got on it. Um, with Frank Gore, him and Frank Gore, it was
Oh
just
yeah.
that team. Like, I know you know that team, Ryan, because they went against them in the Super Bowl. But
Yeah.
that team was it was exciting to see. And I know Kaepernick took over, but before that 2011 season, that before Kaepernick and Alex Smith played, that 2011 season was just a nice, like, incredible, like, San Francisco team that had to beat their rivals and the Seahawks, and then they played the Saints in
The Vernon Davis game.
the Vernon Davis
Yes.
game, the catch too, like, and then they went against the Giants, and that was like one of the hardest, grittiest, like, games that I have ever seen. Like, still to this day, like, him and Eli Manning going at it, it was insane. And then, the Kaepernick stuff happened, and then he went to Kansas, and people forget that in Kansas he had 3,000 passing yards every season. He had a 4,000 passing yard season with them before the GOAT came in, obviously. And it's kind of sad because Alex Smith is just the true definition of a warrior. Like, that San Francisco 49 team early, that I mentioned with Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, was just, that team should have had a Super Bowl, like, honestly. And just to see him go to Kansas, and then, like, just the luck, like, just to get injured and have one of the best quarterbacks coming up, Patrick Mahomes, behind you, and just to set you off to Washington, where had a really bad, gruesome injury, similar to what Lawrence Taylor did back in the day.
The Jet Theismann.
Yeah, it was similar. Like, and I think I read it was actually kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, you've seen that?
I know what you're talking about. The
yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
coincidences.
Yeah, the coincidence. Like, it was on the same yard line and the same time and the same score and all that. Like, that was kind of weird. Like,
Yeah.
so, like, just all of that, like, with Alex Smith was kind of crazy. Then his infection that he had in 2019, where he had like 18, 20 surgeries on his right leg, where it didn't even look like a leg anymore. And then to
Yeah.
come back and to lead this team into the playoffs before getting hurt again, definitely an unsung hero. Like, Alex Smith he had a very good, I think, 15-year career. Just kudos to him. I mean, and I'm thankful for him to showing me such a great 49ers team. I fell in love with Patrick Willis, and I wouldn't have known about that team if it wasn't for Alex Smith. Just kudos to a very tough, gritty career, and a dude who's just a true definition of a warrior.
Yeah, I think overall, sometimes we like to attach the term game manager to a quarterback. And I've always hated that term because it's always used as like a negative. Alex Smith was a game manager. He wasn't going to be the Patrick Mahomes or Joe Flacco. I'm going to launch the ball 80 yards downfield every other throw. We're just going to play, spin the wheel of outcomes, everything like that. Mahomes is more than that, but, that's kind of his style. He likes to stretch the field. Alex Smith wasn't that for most of his career. But I think that overall, he did his job, and he did his job so well. And he was always such a good professional. He was always making the right plays most times. Like, he was never going to lose you a game. And unlike most game managers, I always felt like Alex Smith could win you a game. Like, I really felt that about him. I think that overall, he's always going to be almost serially underrated, mostly because of the guys that would always kind of come after him. Like you're saying, he was a really unlucky player in some cases, in that he gets drafted first overall, and Aaron Rodgers gets picked, at pick 22 behind him. So now he will forever eternally be the guy that got picked ahead of Aaron Rodgers, everything like that. And then, he's got a team that could go to the Super Bowl, and then he gets a concussion, and then Colin Kaepernick takes over and, basically runs him out of town because of his hot hand and everything. And then he goes to Kansas City, and they were so close so many times there. Like, I really felt like one of those Kansas City teams had the potential. I remember they were like the first team that really made you go, is Tom Brady done? Like, are the Patriots dynasties over? Because there were at least 2 seasons, I want to say, where like Alex Smith just came in and beat the brakes off of him. I want to say it was in Kansas City or in Foxborough one year. And like, just made you think maybe this is over finally with them. And then it wasn't, because, Tom Brady is immortal and everything. But Like Alex
Uh,
Smith will forever be so underrated for me. And then what he did for Patrick Mahomes is, coming through and he mentored him that entire season, knowing that, next year I'm probably gone. Like, it's over for me. They've drafted their guy. But unlike some guys, looking at Brett Favre, for example, that, don't play nice with their rookie backups, Alex Smith was the exact opposite of that. And I mean, Mahomes has credited Smith so many times already for everything he's done. So I think that overall, consummate professional, and like you guys are saying, absolute warrior. Like Ryan, I'm with you. If my leg broke like that, I don't care how, say I was playing baseball and that happened. I don't care how much I love baseball. I don't think I could get through that again.
yeah.
I'd just be done. Like, to be that close to dying, literally, he was almost dead from that injury, and then to come back and play again, despite the
18
fact
surgeries.
the fact that your coach is literally cringing and not wanting to play you because he doesn't want to see that happen to you again, and to still come back and lead your team to the postseason as the stabilizing presence that erases all the things that Dwayne Haskins was doing wrong, is he's such a warrior. And to win comeback player of the year, I'm glad that he got to come back at least for himself and have closure. Like, I came back, I went out on my terms. I get to say when I retire. Like, the exact opposite of the LaMarcus Aldridge situation. He came back and he fought and he got his chance. So I'm happy for him and I wish him all the best luck. And honestly, I kind of hope he goes into coaching. Like, I think that he could be that kind of guy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And just like you were saying, he had 18 surgeries. And I mean, even when he came back, he just looked like so, like, it just his craft and his work, his drop back just looked so, like, I was so scared for him because he was wearing like a black sleeve most of the time, and it's like, what's going under that black sleeve? Like, are you okay? And then we had like he beat the Giants and the Cowboys, I believe, and they were just like, players and coaches were saying like, I can't believe we lost to a man with one leg. Like, that's how bad it was. But yeah, it's just a warrior, and like it's just kind of sad that he never got a chance to get a ring because he was always a part of teams that had such like dominating defenses. Like, we know what San Francisco had, led by Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, and then he went with the Chiefs. Justin Houston, Tamba Hali, Eric Berry, Donatari Poe. Like, he was just behind like such great defenses, and then with Washington too, they were getting their defense up with Chase Young now, and it's just sad that he never got a real good chance to finally get a ring, especially after a lot of good years. And he was probably one of the best game managers of like all time, honestly, because he actually figured it out. He knew he had the defense. He knew what he was worth. He knew he didn't have to do much, but when he would do something, it'd have to be big in big time moments. And that's how I'll always remember Alex Smith.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to wrap this episode up by talking about UFC 261 is today. So I want to consult it's on Saturday. I want to consult our resident MMA expert here, Eddie. Eddie, what are you looking forward to now? Of course, we got 3 championship fights coming up, main events.
I am probably going to predict that all champions are going to keep their belts. With George Masvidal fighting again, almost around the same time as it did last year, but he fought on a 10-day, 11-day notice where he had to lose 20 pounds in 10 days. So he wasn't really all there for his fight. He was extremely gassed. And I know he kept saying, after the fight, give me a full camp and I can show you what I could do. Because Kamaru Usman's been on a tear. He finished Gilbert Burns, and then before that he finished Colby Covington, and then before that he finished Tyron Woodley. But he didn't finish George Masvidal. And he keeps saying that he took this fight again because he wanted to show him that, hey, like, just because you lasted 5 rounds and you were on a week and a half notice, like, doesn't give you like I'm not done with you yet. He said, you're here because I want you to be here. So I believe Usman wants to finish George Masvidal and continue his tear. And I believe he will. He's been very like, he knows how to handle his game. He's a great wrestler. If he wants to stand up, he'll stand up. He likes to demoralize a man, is like, quote unquote, is what he said. He likes to take someone's soul, someone's heart, because that lives with you forever. and which he's been doing, but he didn't really get to do it for George Masvidal. And as much as I like, George Masvidal, I don't think he can do it. It's just Usman's just he's one of the best welterweights I think of all time behind George St. Pierre. I think he continue his reign. And then in the women's strawweight, or Rose Namajunas trying to take away Wei Zhang's belt, I think she keeps it. Very underrated. And Valentina Shevchenko is just, you don't want to go against that woman. She's insane. Like she will stay there for a while. And I think Jessica Andrade's too, I guess one-sided, you could say. She's very she's just more of a boxer, and she's shorter than Valentina. And I think Valentina will just make short work of her. And I think all champions keep their belts.
Yeah, I know personally I'm with you there. I feel like this is one of those, events where nothing really earth-shattering happens. It just feels like all three champions have some distinct advantages of their opponents. So I'm with you. I think that all three champions will retain their belts this coming Saturday.
Yeah, the title fight's the main event. I think Usman and Masvidal will be very interesting. Even though I do see Usman winning, it's just both of them are very exciting, entertaining fighters.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have for this week. I want to thank everybody again for watching, listening, and tuning in. And we will see you all next week. Have a good one.